Hello there, and welcome to the Dailyg number 4. I will today go further with my travels from Australia after my year there. And if you have not received or seen the first 2 videos or 3 videos, the first one was basically an introduction to the videos I'm going to make, the Dailygs. I want to produce a lot of content, share a lot of content from what I've learned throughout my life, the last years, and many other things. Because it's fun to document for myself, it's fun to document for the people who are following, because we all can all share and give of ourselves, and that has value. And I will definitely recommend you doing the same thing, because I can also learn from you. So the first video was basically that introduction. The second video was about how the first year led up to starting traveling, because it took actually a year for me to start traveling, or it was sort of a year that was warming me up to start traveling. And then the first year of traveling, when I left Denmark the first time, was my year in Australia, in Perth and in Broome, and how I ended up on a family farm that was awesome, and one of my favorite places in the world, and how my journey took me upwards to Broome, up north of Perth, as well as back to Perth, and how my year finished. It's sort of an overview. It's hard to go into crazy details, but it's about how I worked and how I lived, and of course I had a lot of experiences in and around Australia, so but mostly on the west coast. So I left Australia January 11th, I believe, or 10th, and I did that for a very specific reason. If you didn't hear in my last video, I said that when I left for Australia, I had a working holiday visa for both Australia and Canada at the same time. And that meant that you have 1 year to enter one of those countries, and then you have 1 year to stay, to work, to do whatever. And I actually left Australia on the 10th of, or the 11th, I guess. Yeah, the 11th of January, because my expiration date for that visa in Canada expired on the 12th. That was the last day I could enter the country and get my my 1 year visa. So it was good to travel up or back in time, basically, because that saved me time. But I went from Australia to London, from London to Canada, and my purpose was to visit a friend in Canada, around Toronto, that I met during my certification week in Florida in September, about 5 months before I started traveling. And from there I would go to Costa Rica, I would go to Vermilion in Ohio, which was the place I started as an exchange student when I was 17, 18. And from there I would go to Costa Rica and then back to Denmark for a little bit, for some weeks. And it was amazing. It was awesome to travel like that, to just have no plans, had plans, but had no obligations other than experiencing. And I stayed 1 week with my friend and his family, and saw Toronto, and then took a bus down to Vermilion in Ohio, near Cleveland, and stayed with the family I stayed with for that year. I think I was there for about a week, and saw a lot of the friends I had not seen in a long time. And that was great, always great, and it's always fun to go back there, because as many small American towns, they're not changing. Everything is the same. But people always appreciate when you come back, and I have a lot of good friends there. So I spent some time there, and then I went to Costa Rica. So Costa Rica was a decision I made because I wanted to do something different, something more. Dan Millman has written a book called The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. This one. it's a book that I've probably read it 5 times now, I think. And I read it about 3 times, I think, in Australia. And he has, every year and a half or so, he has a 1-week workshop in Costa Rica, which is basically an adventure, where you go into some of his teachings, and you are at this really beautiful resort called Pura Vida at top of a mountain near one of the main cities in Costa Rica. And that was one of the most amazing weeks in my life. 43 people were there in total, and I got a lot of friendships. And over the next 2 to 3 years, I saw many of those friends that I met, or people that I met there as friends, all over the US, and even one came to Denmark to visit me. So it was a week where a lot of things both manifested in terms of, I felt really good in terms of my life, my travels, and how I was doing at the time. And I also began to see that this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to begin to go to conferences or workshops, because that's where the people were who were more of a like mind than me, or at least I felt at home. I could talk to people who were seeking, who were open, who were wanting to get more out of life. It was very interesting, and there's many details. I will probably go into them more in another video, because I just want to kind of get an overview of my travels, and then I can go into some more depth at some point. But what was really interesting was when I left Costa Rica. First of all, you have to pay to leave the country. And the twins, as I call them, twins from Houston, they did not have any cash, or their car didn't work or whatever, so I had to help them out, which was fine, because I had to stay with one of them for a layover in Houston before I left to go back to Denmark. But what was interesting was when we sat in the airplane, we happened to be sitting next to each other. We began to talk about the journey in life and the inspiration we've gotten that week, and that basically planted a seed about this project, Your Unique Journey, a project which was going to be about stories, people's stories, sharing of our uniqueness, who we are, and many other things. And it's a project that I've been working on since then, that was the early part of 2011. So that's close to 7 years now. And it's a project that I'm thinking about often. I tried to start it once with the first book in a book series, and I just didn't go through with it for whatever reason at the time. But it's a project that is dear to me still, and it's something that sort of has to mature within myself first, I think, before it really comes out. But I really have a good faith in that it will. And it's about sharing our stories, sharing who we are in a different formats, and that we all can share something. Either if it's short stories or if it's actually a biography a biography about other people, because it's not just celebrities and famous whatevers who are interesting. We are all interesting. We all have interesting lives, and we can all share that with each other. So that was sort of the foundation for the project. I left and went back to Denmark, and I was happy. I remember walking from the station of course it was a bit of travel to go back to Denmark, but when I arrived in my hometown during the middle of the night, I wanted to surprise my parents. They thought I was a thief, which was a little bit of an anticlimax, I guess. But I stayed there for some weeks, and then I began to, I was really happy about my life, the way I was living and traveling, and I decided to keep traveling. So I went back to California to go to another workshop with Dan Millman, and then I went to another workshop with some workshops, all in all 4 workshops with Dr. Joe Dispenza. He was a chiropractor, and he's an author, and basically kind of a scientific philosopher, I guess you could say. He's focusing a lot on meditation and so on, and I went to a lot of his workshops because of it just was the time, and I started to connect with tons of people. And that was during September, the end of September, and until the end of no, that was the end of March. From the end of March until the end of May. And then from there, I went to a bigger conference in Chicago, which was Celebrate Your Life conference, which was where thousands and thousands of people are there to listen to keynote speakers, to smaller workshops, and so on. And I went with Jeff and Ray, the Houston twins, as I call them. And it was such an amazing week. That's also where I fell in love with a woman, and I think that's a good place to stop, because from that point on and the next few years, my life got very difficult. So up until that time, a lot of really good things has happened, and for some reason now life wanted me to tell me or give me a challenge of a relationship, a challenge to face myself, and it took me many years to do that. So that is summary from a year before I started traveling until a year and a half into traveling, pretty much. So that's where I will stop with this video, and I hope you will subscribe to my channel. You can do that right below, and I look forward to continue this journey with you. So sign up, subscribe, and share this video if you want, and reach out to me if I can be of any support or help with travels or life or anything. I'm open to that. So until next time, the next Daily G, see ya.